The GPS said I'd reached my destination 5 miles back, which was the first sign something was wrong. The second was when my phone lost signal, followed promptly by my car sputtering to a halt on a stretch of desert highway that wasn't on any map I'd studied. "Piece of shit rental," I muttered, slamming the door hard enough to send dust spiraling into the late afternoon air. The setting sun cast long shadows across a landscape that looked like it had been forgotten by time itself. I'm Nora Webb, journalist, skeptic, and now, apparently, stranded motorist. I'd come to investigate rumors of strange happenings in this corner of Nevada, rumors I'd fully expected to debunk with my usual cynical efficiency. The magazine I wrote for specialized in exposing supernatural hoaxes, and I had a particular talent for finding the strings behind the ghostly puppets. In the distance, something glimmered. A town, maybe? Salvation in the form of civilization, or at least a landline. I grabbed my backpack, locked the useless car, force of habit, and started walking. An hour later, I reached the outskirts of what had clearly once been a mining town. Weathered wooden buildings lined a main street that time had cracked and nature had begun to reclaim. The town's welcome sign hung by a single nail, "Welcome to Meridian Springs, EST 1887. Hello? My voice echoed back at me, hollow and somehow flatter than it should have been. Anyone here? I need help with my car. The silence that answered wasn't just the absence of response, it felt deliberate, like the town itself was holding its breath. Fantastic, I sighed, trudging forward. Just what the article needed, authentic ghost town ambience. The sun was setting faster than it should have been, shadows stretching impossibly long across the dusty main street. I tried my phone again, still no signal. Not even emergency services. As darkness fell, I noticed something odd. There were no stars. The sky above was blank, like black velvet. I pushed open the door to what had once been a hotel, wincing at the loud creak of hinges that probably hadn't moved in decades. The lobby was surprisingly intact, dusty but not destroyed. The reception desk still had an ancient ledger open, a pen lying across its yellowed pages. "Just passing through," I called out, not sure why I felt compelled to announce myself to an empty building. "Need to use your phone if you've got one." A floorboard creaked upstairs. Then another, like footsteps moving slowly across the ceiling above me. "Hello," I called again, my skepticism waging war with primal instinct. "I'm coming up, okay?" The stairs protested under my weight but held. At the top was a hallway with doors on either side, all closed except one at the far end, which stood slightly ajar. A faint light flickered from within. I'm not an idiot in horror movies who walks toward certain death, but I'm also not someone who believes in ghosts. I approached cautiously, pushing the door open with my foot. Inside, a lantern burned on a small table. Sitting beside it was a man about my age with tired eyes and 3 days' worth of stubble. He looked up, unsurprised. "Let me guess," he said wearily. "Car trouble?" His name was Eli Rivera, and he'd been here for 3 days. Or so he thought. He wasn't entirely sure anymore. "Time gets weird here," he explained as we sat in what had once been the hotel's dining room. He collected candles from various buildings, giving the space a seance-like atmosphere. My watch stopped at 8:17 the moment I arrived. So did my phone. I checked my own devices. My phone read 8:17. My watch had stopped at the same time. "That's just coincidence," I said, not believing it myself. Eli laughed without humor. "There are no coincidences in Meridian Springs. Only patterns we haven't recognized yet." He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "I'm a tech consultant. I deal in code and logic. None of this makes sense. Have you tried leaving?" I asked the obvious question. "Every day. The roads loop back. The desert." He trailed off. "Let's just say the desert isn't hospitable after dark." As if on cue, a low moan drifted through the open window. Not wind, but something that raised the hair on my arms. "What was that?" I whispered. "The others," Eli replied cryptically. "The ones who never found shelter." Before I could demand clarification, the door to the dining room swung open. A woman stood there, mid-60s, with silver hair and the kind of weathered face that spoke of a life lived outdoors. She carried a shotgun with casual familiarity. "You brought another one?" she said to Eli, her accent thick with Appalachian roots. "Found her, not brought her," Eli corrected. "This is Nora. She's a journalist." The woman snorted. "Journalist? Great. We got a tech boy who can't get us internet. and now a writer who can't write us out of here. She stepped forward, extending a calloused hand. June Blackwood. I was passing through on my way to my daughter's when I got sidetracked. How many people are trapped here? I asked. 5, counting you, June replied. There's also Raj, he's a college student, and Damon, some kind of corporate type. Neither talks much. I stood up, my journalistic instincts kicking in despite the situation. And none of you can leave? You've all tried. It's not that we can't leave the town, Eli clarified, something haunted flickering in his eyes. It's that the town won't let us leave. As if in response, the building around us groaned, wood shifting like a sleeping beast adjusting its position. The candles flickered simultaneously, shadows dancing across the peeling wallpaper. June raised her shotgun slightly. Sun's down. They'll be active soon. Who? I demanded, my patience wearing thin with the cryptic warnings. Eli and June exchanged glances. It was Eli who finally answered. The original residents. The ones who never left. The ones who can't leave. Outside, the moaning sound came again, closer this time, accompanied by the unmistakable sound of shuffling footsteps on the dusty street. Look, I said, trying to remain rational, there's obviously some explanation for all this. Gas leaks causing hallucinations, maybe some kind of shared psychosis. Tell that to Lee, June cut me off sharply. Poor bastard tried to run for it last night. Found pieces of him this morning. My stomach lurched. There were 6 of you? Yesterday there were, Eli said quietly. But he didn't believe either. The windows suddenly rattled in their frames and a chill swept through the room that had nothing to do with desert night air. The candles went out all at once, plunging us into darkness. In the sudden blackness, I felt something brush against my neck, cold, dry fingers like parchment paper. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Just the sensation of being watched by dozens of unseen eyes. Don't move, June whispered fiercely. Don't run. They can smell fear. And in that moment, despite a lifetime of skepticism, I believed her. Morning came suddenly as if someone had flipped a switch. One moment it was pitch black, with those unseen presences circling us like sharks. The next, sunlight streamed through the dusty windows. The seamless transition felt wrong, artificial, like a glitch in reality. They never actually attack, Eli explained as we gathered in what had once been the town's small diner. 2 more survivors had joined us, Raj, a physics grad student with nervous hands, and Damon, who wore what remained of a once expensive suit and refused to make eye contact. They just hurt us. Keep us contained. Speak for yourself, Damon muttered, rolling up his sleeve to reveal deep, blackened gouges in his forearm. This wasn't a friendly misunderstanding. June was cooking something on a camping stove she'd salvaged from her truck. We need to show her, she said to Eli without looking up. He nodded reluctantly. The library. The Meridian Springs Library was a surprisingly substantial building for such a small town. Inside, dust motes danced in shafts of sunlight that shouldn't have been able to penetrate the grime-covered windows. Eli led me to a back room where newspapers and ledgers had been spread across a large table. Meridian Springs wasn't just a mining town, he explained, pointing to a faded headline from 1924, Town Quarantined, Unknown Disease Claims Dozens. Some kind of plague? I asked, journalistic instincts momentarily overriding my fear. Raj spoke up for the first time. Not a natural one. His voice was soft but intense. The symptoms described in these accounts, rapid onset, extreme aggression, and aversion to darkness yet an inability to tolerate direct sunlight, they're inconsistent with any known pathogen. I scanned the articles. Reports described townspeople becoming possessed by unholy hunger, attacking each other, and ultimately being sealed inside the town by government order. The final article, dated 3 months after the quarantine began, simply stated, Meridian Springs tragedy contained. Town TO be struck from maps. They burned it, June said from the doorway where she'd been listening. Burned the whole damn town with everyone inside. Or they thought they did. That's not possible, I argued. The buildings are all still here. Old, yes, but not burned. Look closer, Eli urged, handing me a magnifying glass. Under magnification, the wood of the table revealed its secret. Beneath the surface, it was charred black, as if the fire had somehow been absorbed into the material itself rather than consuming it. Everything here burned, Raj explained. But the fire didn't destroy, it transformed. Our working theory is that the collective trauma and terror of those final moments somehow imprinted itself on reality. So we're what, in a ghost town that's actually a ghost? I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice even as evidence mounted. More like a pocket dimension, Raj continued. A place that exists between realities sustained by the echoes of what happened here. Damon laughed bitterly from his corner. Great comfort, kid. We're trapped in metaphysical amber with the shadows of plague victims. A realization struck me. The time 8:17. Was that when they set the fire? Eli nodded. According to the military logs we found, 8:17 p.m., October 17, 1924. The moment this place was severed from the rest of the world. And now it pulls people in? I asked. Why us? Why now? The centennial, June said. 100 years this October. The veil's thinning. Outside, despite the apparent daylight, shadows were beginning to lengthen in impossible ways. Through the window, I could see shapes moving on the street, not people but distortions in the air like heat mirages given partial substance. They're becoming active earlier, Eli noted with alarm. The boundaries are weakening. So what do we do? I demanded. How do we get out? June's expression hardened. We don't all get out. That's what they've been trying to tell us. What do you mean? Raj looked uncomfortable. The entities, they've been leaving messages. Scratched into walls, arranged in book pages. Always the same sentiment, a soul for a soul. They're trapped here, Eli explained. Have been for a century. They want release. And you think they want us to, what? Sacrifice one of us? The idea was so absurd I almost laughed. No one else was laughing. They won't let us all leave, June said flatly. That much is clear. But they might let most of us go. The implications hung in the air between us. Outside, the shadows continued to grow despite the unchanging light. That's monstrous, I finally said. We can't just decide who stays behind. Lee already stayed behind, Damon said quietly. Not that it helped. A terrible silence fell over the room. I could almost hear the individual calculations happening behind each person's eyes, survival odds, moral justifications, the weight of their lives against the others. There has to be another way, I insisted. What if we could help them move on instead? Resolve whatever's keeping them here. Raj perked up. Like a proper burial? Ceremonial cleansing? Those are established cross-cultural practices for appeasing restless spirits. Or, Eli said slowly, what if we find whoever gave the order? The government officials who decided to burn innocent people alive rather than help them. They'd be long dead, June pointed out. Their descendants wouldn't be, Eli countered. The institutional memory, the records. Someone knows what really happened here. Someone has been covering it up. As they debated, I noticed something on the back page of one of the newspapers, a small article about the military commander who'd overseen the quarantine, Colonel Walter Price. According to the piece, he'd been hailed as a hero for containing the threat at great personal cost. Guys, I interrupted, I think I found something. The article mentioned Price had been haunted by his decision until his death in 1963, but had insisted it was necessary to prevent a greater catastrophe. His personal papers had been donated to a university archive by his grandson, Howard Price, described as a prominent defense contractor. Howard Price, I repeated. I know that name. My magazine did a piece on him last year. He's still alive, head of Price Tech Industries. They specialize in experimental bioweapons research. The room went still as the implications sank in. It wasn't a natural plague, Raj whispered. It was an experiment. And they burned the evidence, June added grimly. The building around us groaned as if responding to our revelation. Outside, the distortions in the air were taking more definite shape, vaguely human figures with elongated limbs and features that seemed to shift when viewed directly. They're not angry at us, I realized. They're trapped here until the truth comes out. Eli was already rummaging through my backpack, pulling out my laptop and camera. Your equipment might not work here, but if we can somehow get out, this story needs to be told. Some of us need to get out, Damon corrected. To make this right. Before anyone could respond, the library doors slammed open. The distorted figures had entered the building, moving with jerky, unnatural motions. But they weren't attacking, they were pointing, gesturing toward the articles we'd uncovered. One of them approached me directly. As it drew near, I could make out its features more clearly. A woman's face, partially melted, her eyes wide with a century of trapped anguish. She reached out a hand that wasn't quite solid. Against every instinct, I reached back. The moment our hands met, visions flooded my mind, frightened townspeople locked in their homes, government trucks arriving not with medicine but with flamethrowers, the betrayal and terror of realizing they'd been deemed expendable. Test subjects. Collateral damage in the name of national security. I pulled away, gasping. They want justice, I managed to say. Not vengeance. The entities were gathering around us now, dozens of them filling the library, their forms becoming more distinct by the moment. In their midst was a door that hadn't been there before, an ordinary wooden door, standing freely in the center of the room, light spilling from underneath it. "A way out," June breathed. "For some of us," Eli corrected. The spectral woman who'd touched me was now pointing at me specifically, then at Eli, Raj, and June in turn. When she pointed at Damon, she shook her head slowly. Damon backed away. No, that's not fair." "Why me?" With terrible clarity, I suddenly understood. "You're not just a corporate type, are you? You're Howard Price's son. That's why you're here?" The look on his face confirmed it before he could deny it. "I didn't know," he whispered. "My father never told me what my grandfather did. I swear I didn't know." The entities were closing in on him now, not aggressively but implacably. "They don't want to hurt you," I told him. "They want you to witness. To understand. To make it right when you get back." "If I get back," he said bitterly. The spectral woman nodded, and I felt a terrible certainty that Damon would indeed return, but changed, bearing the knowledge these souls had carried for a century. The door in the center of the room swung open, revealing not another room but a stretch of desert highway. My rental car was visible in the distance, still parked where I'd left it. "They're letting us go," Raj said in wonder. "To tell their story." June looked at Damon, who stood surrounded by the flickering figures of Meridian Springs' original inhabitants. "You sure about this, son?" He straightened his shoulders. "Go. Tell the truth. I'll bear witness here." As we stepped through the door, back into the world we knew, I looked back one last time. The town was already fading from view, becoming transparent, the buildings and streets melting into the desert landscape. Only Damon remained solid, standing amongst fading ghosts, his expression one of grim acceptance. The door closed behind us and vanished. 3 days later, my exposé on the Meridian Springs massacre and cover-up went live. Price Tech Industries stock plummeted as government investigations were announced. Howard Price faced congressional hearings. And exactly 1 week after we escaped, Damon Price walked out of the desert, miles from where any road led. He was dehydrated but alive, with no memory of how he'd survived or where he'd been. But he joined our campaign for truth without hesitation, testifying about his family's role in the century-old atrocity. Sometimes on cold nights, I still feel phantom fingers brushing against my neck. Not threatening, but reminding. The dead of Meridian Springs had found their justice at last. But I know better than most that some ghost towns are never truly empty and some stories never really end.